How dare you touch that? People like you can't afford anything here anyway. The slap echoed through Lux Boutique's marble interior like a gunshot. Amara Johnson's head snapped sideways, her cheek burning from store manager Victoria Whitmore's manicured hand. The 38-year-old woman had simply been examining a handbag's craftsmanship when the assault occurred. Other customers gasped. Phones emerged immediately, capturing the aftermath of violence that would reshape luxury retail forever. These real-life stories of discrimination escalate beyond words daily. But this encounter would prove that assumptions about power can be catastrophically wrong. Victoria stood triumphant in her designer suit, believing she'd successfully protected merchandise from an unworthy customer. Amara remained motionless, her simple jeans and sweater contrasting sharply with the boutique's opulent atmosphere. "Security!" Victoria shouted. "We have a situation here!" Amara touched her stinging cheek, then checked her Apple Watch. 15 minutes until her board call. Have you ever been physically assaulted for simply existing in a space where someone decided you didn't belong? 30 minutes earlier, Amara had walked through Lux Boutique's glass doors with the quiet confidence of someone comfortable in any environment. The Rodeo Drive flagship store sparkled under crystal chandeliers, its cream marble floors reflecting designer displays that cost more than most people's annual salaries. She wore her weekend uniform, dark jeans, cream cashmere sweater, comfortable leather flats. No logos, no flash. Just understated quality that spoke to those who understood true luxury versus ostentatious display. The boutique catered to Beverly Hills elite. Actresses, tech moguls' wives, and entertainment industry royalty browsed handbags starting at $5,000. This Saturday afternoon brought the usual crowd of perfectly coiffed women clutching tiny dogs and credit cards with no limits. Victoria Whitmore surveyed her domain from behind the mahogany checkout counter. The 42-year-old manager had worked luxury retail for 15 years, developing what she considered an expert eye for distinguishing serious buyers from browsers. Her blonde hair was styled in a perfect bob, her St. John knit suit cost $3,000, and her attitude reflected someone who believed appearance determined worth. "Can I help you find something?" Victoria's tone carried barely concealed condescension as Amara approached the handbag display. "I'm browsing, thank you." Amara's voice was warm but focused. Victoria's eyes swept over Amara's casual attire with practiced judgment. No jewelry except simple diamond studs, no designer labels visible, no obvious wealth markers that Victoria had trained herself to recognize in legitimate customers. "These pieces start at $5,000, Victoria announced loudly enough for nearby customers to overhear. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the outlets down the street." Amara continued examining a burgundy leather bag, her fingers tracing the hand-stitched seams with appreciation for craftsmanship. "The construction is excellent. Italian leather?" "Ma'am, please don't handle the merchandise unless you're making a purchase." Victoria stepped closer, her voice sharpening with authority, designed to establish dominance over someone she perceived as an intruder in her carefully curated luxury environment. "I'm considering this bag for purchase." Amara lifted the piece to examine the interior compartments, her fingers tracing the precision stitching that justified the premium price point. Victoria's laugh was sharp and dismissive, carrying the condescension of someone who believed she possessed superior judgment about customer worthiness. "That's a Hermes Kelly bag. It costs $28,000. Do you understand what that means?" The question hung in the air like an insult wrapped in fake concern. Victoria's tone suggested that someone dressed as casually as Amara couldn't possibly comprehend such astronomical amounts, let alone possess the financial resources necessary to make such a purchase. Other customers turned to witness the confrontation, their expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort as they observed the manager's increasingly aggressive stance toward a woman who had done nothing more than examine merchandise in a store designed for exactly that purpose. A teenage girl named Sarah Chen pulled out her phone, her social media instincts recognizing the potential for viral content. Her TikTok account had gained followers by documenting celebrity sightings and Beverly Hills social dynamics, but this felt different, more significant than typical influencer drama. "I understand the price point perfectly," Amara replied with measured calm, continuing her examination of the bag's hardware and stitching quality with the appreciation of someone who truly understood luxury craftsmanship. "Right." Victoria's voice dripped skepticism as she gestured to assistant manager Bradley Morrison, a nervous 26-year-old who specialized in avoiding confrontation and maintaining the status quo. "Bradley, please watch this customer carefully. We've had issues recently with people attempting to switch price tags or damage expensive items for insurance fraud purposes." Bradley approached reluctantly, his discomfort with the situation's obvious racial undertones evident in his hesitant body language. However, his fear of challenging Victoria's authority outweighed his moral concerns about participating in what was clearly discriminatory treatment based on appearance rather than behavior. "Ma'am, store policy requires that we monitor all interactions with high-value merchandise," Bradley explained apologetically, his voice carrying the uncertainty of someone following orders he didn't fully support. Amara opened her own handbag, an understated Hermes Kelly in black that Victoria failed to recognize despite its $25,000 retail value. Inside, multiple black American Express Centurion cards nestled alongside her phone, which displayed a calendar reminder. Johnson Holdings Board Meeting, 2:30 p.m. She glanced at the notification, then returned her attention to the burgundy bag. "The craftsmanship justifies the investment. I appreciate quality construction in luxury goods." Victoria interpreted Amara's calm responses as confirmation of deception. Legitimate customers became defensive when questioned about their purchasing power. This woman's composed acceptance of scrutiny suggested someone planning an elaborate theft or fraud attempt. "Ma'am, I need to see identification and a credit card before you continue handling that merchandise," Victoria demanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to intimidating perceived threats. "That seems reasonable for a purchase of this magnitude," Amara agreed, reaching into her bag. Victoria stepped closer, invading Amara's personal space with aggressive body language designed to establish dominance. "People like you always think you can just walk into establishments like this and act like you belong." "People like me?" Amara's voice remained steady, but something flickered behind her eyes. "You know exactly what I mean." Victoria's voice carried the confidence of someone who believed she held all the power in this interaction. Sarah Chen's phone captured every word, her live stream attracting viewers drawn by the hashtag #LuxBoutiqueDrama. Comments began flooding in as people recognized the developing discrimination incident. Amara checked her Apple Watch again. "I have 12 minutes before my next appointment. Shall we proceed with the transaction?" "Transaction?" Victoria laughed harshly. "Ma'am, you're not buying anything here. I'm calling security to escort you out before you cause any real problems." The assault came without warning. As Amara reached toward the bag one final time, Victoria's hand struck her cheek with vicious force. The slap echoed through the boutique like breaking glass. "How dare you touch that? People like you can't afford anything here anyway." Amara stood perfectly still, her hand rising slowly to touch her burning cheek. The other customers stared in shocked silence, phones recording the aftermath of violence that had crossed every line of professional conduct and human decency. Victoria breathed heavily, adrenaline surging through her system as she processed what she'd just done. But instead of regret, she felt satisfaction. She'd protected her store from someone who clearly didn't belong. The black stories that shape America often pivot on moments like this, when prejudice collides with reality in ways that reveal the true character of everyone involved. The boutique fell into stunned silence following Victoria's assault. Customers stared in disbelief, while phones captured every angle of the aftermath. Amara remained motionless, her hand pressed against her reddening cheek, processing the reality that she'd been physically attacked for examining merchandise in her own store. Victoria's breathing was heavy, adrenaline coursing through her system. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, but her expression showed satisfaction rather than regret. In her mind, she'd successfully protected valuable merchandise from someone who clearly didn't belong in an establishment catering to Beverly Hills elite. "Everyone saw what happened," Victoria announced to the watching customers, her voice carrying theatrical authority. "This person was attempting to steal expensive merchandise. I was defending store property." Sarah Chen's live stream had exploded to over 3,000 viewers within minutes. Comments flooded the screen as people shared the video across social media platforms. The hashtag #LuxBoutiqueDrama began trending on TikTok and Twitter simultaneously. "Y'all are witnessing assault happening live," Sarah whispered to her camera, her teenage voice trembling with excitement and horror. "This manager just slapped a customer for looking at a purse." Comments erupted across the screen. "Call the police! That's straight-up assault! This is insane! Someone's getting fired! Classic Beverly Hills racism!" Bradley Morrison, the assistant manager, stood frozen behind the jewelry counter. His face had gone pale as he processed the legal implications of what he'd witnessed. Assault charges, civil lawsuits, corporate liability, all of it raced through his mind as he watched the situation spiral beyond any possibility of damage control. "Victoria, maybe we should—" Bradley began nervously. "Should what?" Victoria snapped. "Should let thieves walk into our store and handle merchandise they can't afford? I don't think so." An elderly customer named Margaret Blackwood, wife of a prominent entertainment lawyer, approached the scene with her phone recording. "Young lady, I witnessed everything. You assaulted that woman without provocation." "Ma'am, please don't interfere with store security procedures," Victoria replied sharply, her confidence remaining unshaken despite mounting evidence against her version of events. "Security procedures?" Margaret's voice carried outrage. "You committed battery against a customer who was browsing peacefully." Amara checked her Apple Watch again. 10 minutes remaining," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. 10 minutes until what? Victoria demanded, interpreting the comment as some kind of threat or deadline pressure tactic. "Until my next appointment begins." Victoria laughed harshly. "What appointment could be more important than dealing with attempted theft charges?" "A board meeting." The response hung in the air with curious weight. Victoria processed the words without understanding their significance, dismissing them as the desperate lies of someone caught in criminal activity. A security guard named Marcus Rodriguez approached from the boutique's entrance. The 40-year-old veteran had worked Beverly Hills retail security for 12 years, responding to countless disputes involving wealthy customers and entitled staff members. His trained eye immediately assessed the situation's volatility. "What's the situation here?" Marcus asked professionally, his voice carrying calm authority. Victoria gestured dramatically toward Amara. "This individual was attempting to steal merchandise. When I prevented the theft, she became aggressive and threatening. I had to defend myself and protect store property." Marcus studied Amara's composed demeanor. Something felt wrong about Victoria's narrative. Legitimate thieves typically showed agitation when confronted by security. This woman displayed the calm confidence of someone accustomed to handling pressure and authority. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened?" Marcus asked Amara gently. "I was examining a handbag for potential purchase when the manager struck me across the face," Amara replied with measured precision. Multiple witnesses recorded the assault. Marcus looked around the boutique, noting at least 6 customers with phones still recording. The legal exposure was enormous. Assault captured on multiple cameras, witnesses willing to testify, social media evidence spreading in real time. "Did anyone actually see her attempting to steal anything?" Marcus asked the crowd. "She wasn't stealing anything," called out Margaret Blackwood. "She was looking at purses like any other customer." "She was handling merchandise she couldn't afford," Victoria insisted. "That's suspicious behavior requiring intervention." "Since when is looking at products in a store suspicious?" asked another customer, a well-dressed woman in her 50s. Sarah Chen's live stream had reached 5,000 viewers as the story gained momentum across social media platforms. Local news outlets began monitoring the viral content, recognizing a story with significant public interest and legal implications. The manager is doubling down, Sarah whispered to her camera. She actually thinks she was right to hit this woman. Amara pulled out her phone and placed a call. The conversation was brief, but carried undertones that made Marcus's security instincts prick with attention. "Marcus, it's time," Amara said into the phone. "Yes, Lux Boutique on Rodeo Drive. Execute option 7 immediately." The call lasted less than 30 seconds. Amara returned the phone to her purse with the same measured composure she'd maintained throughout the ordeal. Victoria had overhead portions of the conversation. "Option 7? What kind of scam are you running?" "Marcus, she's clearly involved in some organized retail theft operation." The security guard's confusion was evident. He'd never encountered a shoplifter who made mysterious phone calls about options and execution. The terminology sounded more corporate than criminal. 8 minutes, Amara announced, checking her watch again. "Ma'am, you're creating artificial deadlines to pressure our staff," Victoria accused. "That's a psychological manipulation tactic used by professional thieves to distract from their criminal activities." Bradley Morrison had been Googling Lux Boutique assault on his phone, watching the story explode across social media in real time. Videos from multiple angles were being shared thousands of times, and news outlets were picking up the story with alarming speed. "Victoria," Bradley whispered urgently, "this is going viral. We need to call corporate immediately." "We need to call the police," Victoria corrected. "I want this woman arrested for attempted theft and making threats." Marcus Rodriguez found himself in an impossible position. He'd witnessed no theft attempt, only an assault by a store manager against a customer. His training emphasized de-escalation, but Victoria's aggressive stance was making that increasingly difficult. "Ma'am," Marcus addressed Victoria carefully, "I didn't see any theft attempt. What I did see was you striking a customer. That's assault, regardless of the circumstances." Victoria's face flushed with anger. "Whose side are you on? I'm trying to protect this store's merchandise and reputation." "I'm on the side of not getting sued into bankruptcy," Marcus replied quietly. The live stream audience had grown to over 8,000 viewers as the story spread across platforms. #JusticeForAmara began trending alongside #LuxBoutiqueDrama as people shared their own experiences with retail discrimination. Amara checked her watch one final time. 5 minutes. Her strange calmness throughout the escalating chaos had begun to unnerve even Victoria, whose confidence was showing its first cracks as she processed the crowd of recording witnesses and the security guard's refusal to support her version of events. Something was about to change, and everyone in the boutique could feel it coming. The boutique's glass doors opened with a soft chime, admitting a tall man in an expensive charcoal suit. Marcus Chen, no relation to the teenage live streamer, carried himself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to handling corporate crises. His presence immediately shifted the room's energy as he surveyed the scene with practiced assessment. "Ms. Johnson," Marcus said, approaching Amara with respectful urgency, "I came as quickly as possible. The board meeting has been moved to accommodate this situation." Victoria watched the interaction with growing confusion. The newcomer's deferential tone toward her assault victim made no sense within her understanding of the power dynamics at play. "Who are you?" Victoria demanded, stepping between Marcus and Amara with territorial aggression. "Marcus Chen, Chief Operating Officer, Johnson Holdings Corporation," he replied, producing a business card with smooth professionalism. Bradley Morrison, who had been frantically Googling throughout the confrontation, suddenly went pale as he stared at his phone screen. His search for Johnson Holdings had produced results that made his stomach drop with devastating clarity. "Oh my God," Bradley whispered, his voice barely audible above the boutique's ambient noise. "What now?" Victoria snapped, irritation growing as she lost control of what should have been a simple shoplifting situation. Bradley turned his phone screen toward Victoria, displaying the Forbes article he'd discovered. Amara Johnson, the billionaire retail empire builder who started with nothing. The accompanying photo showed Amara in a tailored business suit, her executive portrait radiating the quiet confidence that Victoria had completely misinterpreted as suspicious behavior. Victoria's eyes darted between the phone screen and Amara's face. The resemblance was unmistakable, but her mind struggled to process the impossible revelation that she'd physically assaulted one of America's most successful business leaders. "That's impossible," Victoria breathed, her voice cracking with the first hints of panic. "She's dressed like someone who values comfort over displays of wealth?" Amara's voice carried quiet amusement. "I've never believed that clothes determine character or capability." Sarah Chen's live stream exploded with reactions as viewers began recognizing the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Comments flooded the screen faster than anyone could read them. "Wait, is that Amara Johnson? The billionaire? She owns like 800 stores. That manager is so screwed. This is the plot twist of the century." The viewer count surged past 15,000 as the story spread across social media platforms with viral velocity. News outlets monitoring trending topics began picking up the story, recognizing its potential for massive public interest. Marcus Chen opened his leather briefcase and extracted several manila folders. "Ms. Johnson, I have the documentation you requested regarding the Luxe Boutique performance analysis." "Performance analysis?" Victoria's voice carried a new note of uncertainty as pieces of a puzzle she didn't understand began falling into place. "I've been conducting undercover customer experience audits at all Johnson Holdings retail locations," Amara explained with calm precision. "This store has been particularly problematic." Bradley Morrison's hands trembled as he continued researching on his phone. Johnson Holdings owned 847 retail locations across North America, including luxury boutiques, department stores, and specialty shops. Their annual revenue exceeded $3.2 billion, making Amara Johnson one of the wealthiest women in America. "You own this store?" Victoria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I own this store, this building, and 46 other luxury retail locations in California alone," Amara confirmed. "Has owned it for 3 years, actually." The security guard Marcus Rodriguez stepped back instinctively, processing the reality that he'd been called to remove the owner of the entire retail chain from her own establishment. The absurdity of the situation left him speechless. Victoria's world collapsed in stages as the full implications became clear. She hadn't just assaulted a customer. She'd physically attacked the most powerful person in her professional universe. Every dismissive word, every condescending gesture, every moment of aggressive intimidation had been directed at someone who could end her career with a single phone call. "Ms. Johnson," Marcus Chen continued, "the preliminary audit results are quite concerning. This location ranks dead last among all 847 Johnson Holdings properties in customer satisfaction metrics." "Dead last?" Bradley repeated weakly, though he wasn't surprised given Victoria's management style. "Customer complaints have increased 312% over the past 8 months, Marcus read from his folder. "Revenue has declined $2.8 million during the same period. Most significantly, 89% of complaints specifically cite discriminatory treatment based on race, age, or perceived economic status." The live stream audience had grown to over 20,000 viewers as major social media accounts began sharing the story. #Luxe Boutique Scandal joined #Justice. For Amara, in trending topics as people expressed amazement at the dramatic reversal of power dynamics. Victoria sank into a nearby chair, her legs unable to support her as the magnitude of her catastrophic error became undeniable. She'd spent her career believing that appearance determined worth, and that belief had just destroyed everything she'd worked to build. "I didn't know," Victoria whispered, though the excuse sounded hollow even to her own ears. "You didn't ask," Amara replied simply. "You saw a black woman in casual clothes and immediately assumed criminal intent. That assumption led to assault." Margaret Blackwood, the elderly witness, spoke up from her position near the jewelry counter. Young lady, your behavior was despicable regardless of who she turned out to be. Every customer deserves basic human dignity. Sarah Chen provided running commentary for her massive live stream audience. Y'all, this is the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. The manager literally assaulted her own boss and didn't even know it. Marcus Chen consulted his documentation. Ms. Johnson, the legal exposure assessment is quite severe. Assault charges, civil liability, potential federal discrimination violations, the estimated damages could exceed $12 million. $12 million? Bradley's voice cracked with panic. That's the conservative estimate, Marcus confirmed. Media exposure and reputational damage could push the figure significantly higher. Victoria found her voice, though it trembled with desperation. Ms. Johnson, please, I had no idea who you were. If you'd known I was wealthy and powerful, you would have treated me differently, Amara interrupted. But the point is that everyone deserves respectful treatment, regardless of their bank account or social status. The brutal truth of that statement hung in the air like an indictment. Victoria's entire approach to customer service had been based on making quick judgments about people's worth based on their appearance and perceived wealth. Marcus Rodriguez, still processing everything, finally found his voice. Ms. Johnson, I apologize for responding to what turned out to be a false security alert. If I'd understood the situation, you responded professionally to a manager's request, Amara replied. Your conduct has been appropriate throughout this incident. The live stream had reached 25,000 viewers as the story continued spreading across platforms. News outlets were beginning to call the boutique, seeking official statements about the viral incident that was reshaping conversations about retail discrimination and corporate accountability. Victoria looked up from her chair with desperate hope. What happens now? Can we work this out somehow? Amara checked her watch one final time. Now we proceed to the emergency board meeting that was called to address this situation. Marcus, are the restructuring documents prepared? Fully prepared, Ms. Johnson. All documentation is ready for immediate implementation. The life stories that define us often pivot on single moments when our true character is revealed under pressure, showing the world exactly who we are when we believe no one important is watching. The boutique's back office had been hastily converted into a makeshift boardroom. Marcus Chen connected his laptop to a large monitor while Amara took her position at the head of the conference table. Victoria and Bradley sat across from her, their faces pale with the recognition that their careers hung in the balance. The live stream audience had swelled to over 35,000 viewers as Sarah Chen positioned herself strategically to capture the proceedings. Major news outlets had begun reporting on the story, amplifying its reach across social media platforms and traditional media channels. This emergency session of Johnson Holdings Board Review addresses serious compliance violations at the Lux Boutique Rodeo Drive location, Amara began, her voice carrying the executive authority that Victoria had failed to recognize earlier. Marcus opened the first presentation slide, displaying performance metrics that painted a devastating picture of the store's operations under Victoria's management. Revenue analysis, Lux Boutique Rodeo Drive, Marcus announced. Annual revenue target, $8.4 million. Actual performance, $5.6 million. Shortfall, $2.8 million, representing a 33% decline over 18 months. Victoria stared at the numbers in shock. She'd been so focused on what she perceived as protecting merchandise from unworthy customers that she'd failed to recognize how her discriminatory practices were destroying the store's profitability. Customer retention statistics are equally problematic, Marcus continued, advancing to the next slide. Repeat customer rate, 23%, compared to company average of 67%. Customer complaint volume, 247 formal complaints in 8 months, compared to company average of 12 per location annually. Bradley Morrison had remained completely silent throughout the presentation, but the devastating numbers were forcing him to confront his own complicity in creating and maintaining the store's toxic culture that had damaged so many customers and ultimately threatened everyone's employment. He'd witnessed Victoria's discriminatory behavior on countless occasions over the months, observing her treat customers differently based on their appearance, accent, or perceived social status, but had never found the courage to speak up or challenge her authority despite knowing her actions were wrong. His silence had enabled the toxic environment to flourish unchecked, allowing discrimination to become normalized workplace behavior that ultimately cost the company millions in lost revenue and legal exposure while creating hostile experiences for countless customers who deserved better treatment. Legal exposure assessment, Marcus announced with clinical precision that made the numbers even more impactful. Current pending complaints could result in $12.4 million in settlement costs, not including punitive damages that could double or triple that figure. Federal discrimination violations carry additional penalties ranging from $100,000 to $750,000 per incident, with repeat offenses facing enhanced penalties that could approach 7 figures. The live stream comments exploded with reactions as viewers processed the staggering financial magnitude of Victoria's discriminatory practices and the cumulative cost of her management approach. $12.4 million? That's what racism costs. Should have treated people with respect. The math doesn't lie. Discrimination destroys profits. Justice served with spreadsheets and data. This is what accountability looks like. Amara leaned forward, her calm demeanor more intimidating than any display of anger could have been. Victoria, your management approach has cost this company millions of dollars in lost revenue and legal exposure. More importantly, it has created an environment where customers are assaulted for the crime of existing while black. Ms. Johnson, I never intended, Victoria began desperately. Intention is irrelevant, Amara interrupted. Impact is what matters. Your actions today represent the culmination of a pattern of discriminatory behavior that has been documented extensively. Marcus displayed the next slide. Incident documentation, 8 months. The screen filled with complaint summaries that formed a clear pattern of bias-based treatment. Manager refused service because I was wearing sneakers. Staff followed me around the store like I was going to steal something. Told I couldn't afford anything here before I even spoke. Manager said this store wasn't for people like me. Each complaint represented a customer lost, revenue declined, and the company's reputation damaged. Victoria had been so convinced of her own judgment that she'd never considered the broader implications of her actions. Today's assault represents the most serious violation in our company's history, Amara continued. Physical violence against customers crosses every line of professional conduct and human decency. The live stream had attracted attention from major news outlets. CNN, NBC, and local Los Angeles stations were monitoring the viral story and preparing reports on corporate accountability and retail discrimination. Marcus advanced to the financial impact slide. Projected losses from today's incident. Immediate revenue loss from store closure, estimated $47,000 per day. Legal settlements, estimated $3 to $5 million. Brand reputation damage, estimated $15 to $20 million in lost company value. Victoria's face went ashen as she processed numbers that exceeded her comprehension. A single moment of violence had triggered financial consequences that could destroy not just her career, but potentially damage the entire company. However, Amara said, her tone shifting slightly, destruction was never the goal. Transformation is. She stood and walked to the window overlooking Rodeo Drive, where protesters had begun gathering after learning about the incident through social media. Signs reading "Justice for Amara" and "End Retail Racism" dotted the growing crowd. This company was built on the principle that luxury should be accessible to anyone who appreciates quality, regardless of their appearance or background, Amara explained. Your management philosophy directly contradicts our core values. Bradley found his voice for the first time during the meeting. Ms. Johnson, I want you to know that I never agreed with Victoria's approach. I should have spoken up sooner. You're right, Bradley. Your silence enabled this toxic environment to continue, Amara replied. But recognition of failure is the first step toward growth. Marcus consulted his documentation. Ms. Johnson, the board has authorized several immediate actions. Should we proceed with implementation? Yes. Victoria Whitmore, you are terminated effective immediately for assault against a customer, discriminatory practices, and violation of company policies regarding inclusive service standards. Victoria's last hope evaporated. Ms. Johnson, please, I have a mortgage, car payments. This job is everything to me. Your financial obligations were your responsibility to consider before you chose to assault a customer, Amara replied without emotion. Actions have consequences. Marcus handed Victoria a termination letter. Severance is denied due to cause-based termination. Security will escort you from the premises immediately. The live stream audience watched as Victoria signed the documents with trembling hands. Her 15-year career in luxury retail had ended with a single slap that revealed her true character to the world. Bradley Morrison, Amara continued, you have a choice. Accept a formal reprimand, mandatory bias training, and probationary status, or resign voluntarily with neutral references. Bradley considered his options carefully. I choose to stay and learn. I want to be part of the solution. Good. Your first assignment is to assist with implementing our new inclusive service protocols. Marcus displayed the final slide. Johnson Protocol Implementation. Luxe Boutique Transformation Plan. The comprehensive program included mandatory bias recognition training every 60 days, diverse hiring requirements ensuring representative staff demographics, mystery shopper programs using customers of all backgrounds, and AI-powered customer interaction monitoring with real-time feedback systems. This location will become a model for inclusive luxury retail, Amara announced. We're going to prove that treating every customer with dignity isn't just morally right, it's profitable. The transformation would be expensive, but Amara understood that sustainable change required investment in systems, training, and cultural evolution rather than simple punishment. Outside, the crowd of protesters had grown to over 200 people as word spread through social media. The incident had sparked broader conversations about retail discrimination and corporate accountability that extended far beyond a single boutique. The world is watching, Amara said, gesturing toward the protesters. How we respond to this crisis will define our company's legacy. Victoria gathered her personal belongings under security escort. Her designer suit a stark contrast to the shame that now defined her public identity. The touching stories of her victims would live on social media forever, while her own story served as a cautionary tale about the cost of prejudice. 2 weeks after the assault that shocked the retail industry, Luxe Boutique reopened with a transformation so comprehensive that business analysts were conducting case studies on rapid cultural change. The store's interior had been redesigned to promote transparency and accessibility, with open sightlines that eliminated hidden corners where discriminatory behavior could flourish unobserved. Bradley Morrison stood near the entrance, greeting customers with genuine warmth that reflected his intensive bias training and personal commitment to change. His demotion to senior sales associate had initially stung, but the experience had taught him valuable lessons about complicity and courage that would guide his future career. Good morning. Welcome to Luxe Boutique, Bradley said to a young black woman in casual clothing who entered the store. His greeting carried no judgment, no assumptions, just professional courtesy extended equally to every customer regardless of appearance. The Johnson Protocol had been implemented with military precision. Every customer interaction was monitored through AI-powered analysis that detected discriminatory language patterns, tone variations, and behavioral indicators suggesting bias. Staff members received real-time feedback through discrete earpieces, allowing immediate course correction when conversations showed signs of problematic direction. Sarah Chen returned to the boutique for a follow-up live stream that would serve as a sequel to her viral original video. Her initial recording had generated over 4.2 million views across multiple platforms, making her an inadvertent spokesperson for retail justice and corporate accountability. "What's up, everyone?" Sarah addressed her camera with the confidence of someone who had accidentally become a social media influencer. 2 weeks ago, this place was basically discrimination headquarters. Today, we're seeing if real change happened or if this was just corporate damage control. She approached the same area where Victoria had assaulted Amara, now staffed by Maria Santos, a bilingual customer service specialist whose hiring reflected the store's new commitment to serving its diverse Beverly Hills clientele. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" Maria's smile was authentic, her posture welcoming and professional. Sarah decided to test the new culture with the same casual appearance that had previously triggered discrimination. "I'm just browsing expensive stuff in my regular clothes. That cool with you?" Maria's laugh was genuine and warm. "Absolutely. Comfort is important, and we want you to feel welcome exactly as you are. Please let me know if you have any questions about our collections." The interaction proceeded smoothly, professionally, and without any hint of judgment based on appearance, age, or perceived economic status. Sarah's followers witnessed the stark contrast between the old toxic culture and the new inclusive environment. Meanwhile, Victoria Whitmore had become a cautionary tale studied in business schools and corporate training programs. Her assault had been viewed over 8 million times across social media platforms, making her face synonymous with retail discrimination and workplace violence. She'd struggled to find employment in luxury retail, with potential employers recognizing her from the viral video. The incident had effectively ended her career in an industry where reputation and customer service skills were paramount. However, Amara's approach had emphasized education over destruction. Victoria was required to complete 200 hours of community service at organizations serving underrepresented communities, participate in restorative justice programs with previous victims of her discrimination, and undergo comprehensive bias training before any employment references would be provided. The transformation extended far beyond individual accountability and corporate policy changes. The Johnson Protocol had been adopted by 73 retail chains across North America within 2 weeks of the incident, with international companies expressing interest in licensing the comprehensive framework for their own operations. Federal regulators were developing mandatory bias prevention requirements based on Amara's systematic approach, creating industry-wide standards that would protect customers while reducing corporate legal exposure and reputational risks. Customer satisfaction scores at Luxe Boutique had increased an unprecedented 127% in just 14 days following the implementation of new protocols. Revenue projections showed the store would exceed annual targets by 34%, providing concrete proof that inclusive practices weren't just morally correct. They were significantly more profitable than discriminatory approaches that alienated potential customers and created hostile shopping environments. The anonymous customer reporting app had processed over 150 submissions during the 2-week transformation period, providing real-time feedback that allowed management to address potential problems before they escalated into formal complaints or viral social media incidents. Most submissions reported positive interactions that exceeded customer expectations, but 12 flagged concerning behavior that was immediately addressed through additional training, coaching, and performance improvement plans. Amara received detailed updates on the transformation's progress through comprehensive daily reports that tracked every metric relevant to customer experience and employee performance. Each data point demonstrated that addressing discrimination through systematic change and cultural evolution, rather than individual punishment alone, created sustainable improvements that benefited everyone involved in the retail ecosystem. The security footage from the original incident had become required viewing material for corporate diversity programs nationwide, with major retailers paying licensing fees to use the content for employee education initiatives. The video served as a powerful example of how quickly professional situations could deteriorate when unconscious bias replaced sound business judgment and customer service excellence. The Federal Trade Commission had launched a comprehensive investigation into retail discrimination practices industry-wide, using the Luxe Boutique incident as a catalyst for broader regulatory reform that would reshape how luxury retailers trained staff and monitored customer interactions. Amara testified before Congress about the business case for inclusive customer service, demonstrating through detailed financial analysis how bias cost companies millions in lost revenue, legal exposure, and reputational damage that could take decades to repair. Her testimony included specific case studies from the Johnson Holdings transformation, showing how the implementation of inclusive practices had generated measurable improvements in every business metric that mattered to shareholders and stakeholders alike. Revenue increases, customer satisfaction improvements, employee retention gains, and legal risk reduction created a compelling argument that treating all customers with dignity wasn't just morally correct, it was the most profitable approach to retail management. Employee satisfaction surveys conducted across all Johnson Holdings locations showed dramatic improvement following the implementation of the new protocols. Staff members reported feeling empowered to provide excellent service without fear of making discriminatory assumptions about customer qualifications, financial capacity, or purchase intentions based on appearance, accent, or cultural background. The security footage from the original incident had been preserved and transformed into training material for corporate diversity programs nationwide, with major retailers licensing the content for employee education initiatives. The video served as a powerful example of how quickly professional situations could escalate when unconscious bias replaced sound business judgment, and how those escalations could destroy careers and damage companies in ways that extended far beyond individual incidents. Marcus Rodriguez had embraced his promotion to corporate security training specialist with enthusiasm that reflected his genuine commitment to preventing future discrimination incidents. His training programs emphasized situational awareness, cultural sensitivity, and de-escalation techniques that prioritized customer dignity while maintaining appropriate security protocols for legitimate concerns. The revolution had succeeded through intelligent leadership that recognized sustainable change required systemic transformation rather than individual retribution. The boutique that had once embodied luxury retail's exclusionary practices was becoming a model for inclusive commerce that other companies studied and replicated. 6 months after that shocking Saturday afternoon assault, Amara Johnson stood before the National Retail Federation's annual conference, addressing over 3,000 industry leaders. The auditorium represented every major retail chain in America, each seeking solutions to discrimination challenges that cost billions in lost revenue and legal settlements annually. "Dignity isn't negotiable in business," Amara began her keynote address. "When we judge customers by appearance rather than character, we don't just harm individuals, we destroy our own profitability and reputation." The presentation screen displayed Johnson Holdings' remarkable transformation data. System-wide discrimination complaints had dropped 96%. Customer satisfaction increased an average of 78% across all 847 locations. Most significantly, revenue had grown $127 million, attributed directly to inclusive service practices that welcomed every customer regardless of background. Her personal journey resonated powerfully with the audience. Amara had built her empire from nothing, growing up in Detroit public housing with a single mother who cleaned office buildings at night. Every assumption about her potential had been wrong. Every barrier had strengthened her determination to create businesses where talent and character mattered more than appearance or zip code. The Lux Boutique incident had become business school legend. Harvard, Wharton, and Stanford taught case studies analyzing her response to crisis. Students learned how transformational leadership could convert discrimination scandals into opportunities for systemic change that benefited everyone involved. Sarah Chen had parlayed her viral live stream into a consulting career, helping companies identify unconscious bias in customer service practices. Her original video remained the most watched retail discrimination incident in social media history, serving as a training tool for organizations worldwide. Victoria Whitmore had completed her community service and bias training requirements. She now worked at a nonprofit organization serving formerly incarcerated women, using her experience with consequences to help others rebuild their lives after making serious mistakes. Bradley Morrison had been promoted to assistant manager at another Johnson Holdings location, his transformation from silent bystander to active ally, making him valuable in training other employees about speaking up against discrimination. The Johnson Protocol had been adopted by 287 retail chains across 4 countries. Federal regulators had implemented mandatory bias prevention requirements based on Amara's framework, creating industry-wide standards that protected customers and reduced corporate legal exposure. Amara's philosophy remained simple but revolutionary. True wealth isn't measured by what you can destroy. It's demonstrated by what you choose to build. Her impact extended far beyond retail. Universities recruited her for leadership programs. Corporate boards sought executives who demonstrated similar capabilities for turning crises into cultural transformation opportunities. The Black stories that had shaped her journey, growing up poor, facing discrimination despite achievements, being underestimated because of race and gender, became sources of strength rather than bitterness. Each challenge had prepared her for moments when she could create lasting change through intelligent action rather than emotional reaction. As Amara concluded her conference presentation, she issued a challenge that would define the next generation of retail leadership. How will you respond when faced with discrimination in your organization? Will you hide behind policies and procedures, or will you have the courage to transform systems that perpetuate inequality? The standing ovation lasted 6 minutes. Your turn to make change. Have you experienced discrimination while shopping, dining, or seeking services? Share your stories in the comments below. Your voice matters in creating awareness and accountability. What would you have done in Amara's position? How can we all become better allies in fighting retail bias and workplace discrimination? Subscribe for more inspiring Black stories of leadership, transformation, and triumph over adversity. Hit the notification bell for real-life stories that challenge us to build a more inclusive world. Share this video with someone who needs to see that quiet strength and strategic action can create revolutionary change. Together, we can ensure every customer receives the dignity and respect they deserve, regardless of appearance or background.